Dear learners, I welcome you to this session, Vendor Rating. The hallmark of an effective purchase department is the quality of suppliers selected. The purchaser's main interest lies in getting the best value from his own suppliers. This implies that he should be in a position to assess and rate their performance against what is expected from an ideal supplier. The absolute standard is difficult to define with exactness, but there should be some method for evaluation of the suppliers and to grade them. The ability to select reliable vendors is the primary objective of any planning department. The familiar saying, "Tell your friends and I will tell you about your character." This applies to the purchasing also. Inform your vendors. The kind of purchasing department can be easily set. It is not that much easy to identify good vendors, but in many cases, the purchase department is criticized without any justification because of the poor vendor performance. An objective and accurate vendor rating can become an asset and a valuable tool in the hands of a buyer in making his or her purchase decisions, and also for providing feedback to the suppliers with a low rating in order to improve their performance. In the absence of such improvement, even after a reasonable period of time, blacklisting the suppliers or greylisting the suppliers will follow. These suppliers, the defaulting suppliers, will be included in the black book and removed from the approved suppliers register of the corporates, and no more contracts will be entered with this grey list suppliers. These grey list suppliers will lose their reputation. In turn, they lose their businesses also. A drawback to the vendor rating is that despite the considerable effort to set up a good system, the end results have too often been a group of unorganized suppliers and an impractical, meaningless mass of data which take too much of effort to compile, and it is said to be worthless to the purchase department. Some companies may make the mistake of adopting, without any appropriate changes, a rating system which may be developed for another company, when obviously each system must be applied to the specific requirements of a particular organization. So the vendor rating system that may be framed by an organization must be unique, and it must be customized as per its own specific requirements. Adopting the strategy of the other corporates will not be a successful one for any company. Too often, attempting to ensure the precision, the goal of improving the quality and reliability of the purchasing system items will be lost. No system can be of any value unless it results in a better vendor performance, nor can it work well unless the people involved understand it and are convinced with the system which is worthwhile to have it. So whatever rating system a company is going to undertake, or whatever rating strategy it has to follow, it must be clear and understandable and must be transparent to the vendors also, so that no eye of suspicion will be placed on buyer's organization. The responsibility of rating the vendors is entrusted with a committee comprising of a chief commercial manager, quality control manager, accounts manager, and a chief production engineer. This committee will meet quarterly to review the performance of the vendors. It may classify the vendors as A, B, and C based on their performance. They may also be categorized as first, second and third. Whatever may be the nomenclature you are going to give, the first items will be of very good performance, and the second one will be the second grade with second class, and the third one will be the C class. So when we have the rating of vendors by the buyers organization, there are certain factors to be considered in this calculations. Now we shall see the criteria for evaluating the vendors. The performance of the vendors is usually evaluated in terms of price, quality, delivery and service. Each of these areas will have many factors to be considered. We shall see one by one. First, we shall see about the pricing. The pricing factors includes the following items. First one is competitive pricing. The prices paid should be comparable to those of all the vendors providing the similar products and services. Normally, the quotations will be received from other vendors also, and it will be compared. The best possible price will be the lowest price without sacrificing the quality. So the prices should be competitive enough when compared with the other vendors. The next comes the price stability. The prices should be reasonably stable over a period of time. So too many fluctuations of prices should not be made by the supplier. The price accuracy. There may be a lower number of variances from the purchase order prices on the invoice receipt. Whatever price that has been quoted in the quotations must be followed by the supplier. Too much of variation should not be there in fixing up the price after receiving the order. Advance note of the price changes. So the note of the changes, namely the information regarding the price changes due to some unavoidable reasons. Say for example, the change in the prices of the raw materials, or changes in the labor rate, changes in the power supply rates, etc. Thus, these factors may influence the rate of the material to be supplied by the supplier. So in this case, we must have some escalation clause which expects a rise in the prices. So this escalation clause should be included in the quotations, and if any changes are to be made, that must be properly notified to the buyer regarding the price changes. The sensitivity to the cost. The vendor should demonstrate respect for the customer's firm's bottom line, that is the customer's profit margin, and show an understanding of its needs. Possible cost savings should be suggested by the vendors, and the vendor should also exhibit a knowledge of the market and share this insight with the buying firms. So wherever we feel the sensitivity of the cost, whenever we feel small changes in the cost, then that will reflect the buyer's profit margins. So when the supplier feels, or when the supplier feels a sense of increase in the cost, then that must be properly intimated to the buyer's firm. And again, billing. The vendor's invoices are accurate. So the billing should be very accurate. The average length of time to receive the credit memos should be very reasonable. The estimates should not be significantly different from the final invoice. And again, the vendor bills must be effectively given in proper time, and it must be easy to understand and read. So when the billing is given, the clear information regarding the quantity, size, color and other engineering specifications must be made in the bills, and once again the terms of the contract, namely the terms of the trade, the purchase orders and regarding the quantity discounts, trade discounts, etc. must be clearly mentioned in the invoices. So the price is said to be the main factor regarding the rating of the vendors. So the prices must be competitive and it must be stable enough, it must be accurate, and proper notices regarding the changes in the prices and the cost sensitivity should also be informed to the buyer's firm. The next comes the quality factors. The quality factors always conforms with the purchase order. So the compliance regarding the quality mentioned in the purchase order should be made. The vendor should comply with the terms and conditions as stated in the purchase order. Does the vendor show an understanding of the customer's firm expectations is an important question to be answered. So the vendor must understand whatever expectations of the buying firm has been revealed at the time of entering into the contract. The conformity to the engineering specifications is said to be of more significant factor to be considered. The product or service must conform to the specifications identified in the request for the proposal and also the purchase order. And the vendor firm should also ensure that the products will perform as expected. The reliability of the product should also be ensured by the vendor. Suppose if there is any failure in the performance of the product, what is the rate of failure, and if that failure is within the reasonable limits as expected. Suppose if the rate of failure is very high, then the vendor will lose his own reputation. Then reliability of the repairs. If all the repairs and rework is said to be acceptable. Suppose if the buyer is not accepting any reworking of the products, then the vendor has to take back all the supplies that has been rejected by the buyers. Durability. Durability of the product is also considered to be very important. And suppose if the product fails, what is the strategy of replacing a particular product, and what is the cost of replacement, and whether the cost of replacement is said to be a reasonable one. Then the support. What is the technical support that is available to the buyer from the vendor's side? Whatever failure the buyer is facing regarding the product's performance, then the vendor has to immediately respond to the problems and they have to resolve the problem as early as possible. Then the warranty. The length and the provisions of the warranty protection that is offered by the vendors must be reasonable, and any warranty problems arises should be solved by the vendors in a reasonable time. Then state of art or a product or a service. Does the vendor offers products and services that are consistent with the industry state of art, whether it is as per the current requirements? The vendor should consistently refresh the product life cycle and by adding some of the enhancements with the products. It should also work with the buying firm in the new product development also. So when the vendor is producing the products as per the technology existing, if the buyer is interested in purchasing a newly developed product or a product with a new technology, then the vendor should be ready to adopt the new technology and to produce a new product with this updated technology. So the state of art of a product or a service is also considered to be more important in rating the vendors. The willingness of the vendors to adopt the technology should be considered. So the quality factors will include the conformity with the purchase orders, conformities with the specifications, the reliability of the product, the reliability of the repairs, then the durability of the products, the technical support from the vendor's side, and the warranties extended by the vendors, and the state of art of the product and the service. Now we shall pass on to the delivery factors. The delivery factors include the time, the quantity, the lead time, packaging, documentation, and the emergency deliveries. First aspect is the time. The vendor has to deliver all the products and services on time, the time scheduled by the buyers. Does the vendor deliver the products on time is the main question to be answered. What is the actual receipt time and whether it is very close to the promising date. The date promised by the vendor should be properly kept by him. The words that are given by the vendors must be kept. Only then the date of receipt will be very closer to the promised dates. Whether the promised dates are as per the lead times of the buying organization, the lead time should be very short and must be acceptable by the buyers. The request for the information, the proposals and the quotations must be properly answered by the vendors also on time. The quantity. Whether the vendor is supplying the accepted quantity, because the correct quantity must be given to ensure the smooth flow of production. Say for example, if you have ordered for 1 lakh units and he is supplying only 80,000 units for want of some problems, in this case the buyer will not be able to cope up with the scheduled production. So the quantity should be correct as per the agreement and it must be properly delivered on time also. Now the lead time. What is the average lead time that is expected by the buyer? So the buyer has to mention the average lead time and he has to compare the lead time of the many vendors and he has to select a vendor which is having the lead time which is matching with the buying institution. So the lead time for the similar products and services will be compared and the vendor who is closely to the lead time of the buyer's organization will be selected. Then the packaging. Suitable packages should be made and it should be properly marked and it must be transported without any damages. The pallets and other material handling equipments can be used and it should be properly overhauled and it must be properly maintained. Then documentation. The proper documents regarding the purchase, namely the invoices, the packing slips, the technical manuals, that is the handy manual, etc., which should be given by the vendor for the proper handling of the materials and proper calculation of the cost of the materials. So the correct material codes and with the purchase order numbers will be mentioned in the invoices. Then emergency delivery. Whether the vendor is giving his own extra effort to meet the requirements of the emergency situations. The buyer gets an order to utilize the idle capacity of his own concern, then he may go in for the emergency purchases. So in case of emergency purchases, what is the reaction of the vendors? Whether the vendor is able to cope up with the emergency purchases and whether he is able to deliver the purchases or the materials on time even if the order is made on emergency conditions. See, the delivery factors will include the time taken for delivery, then the quantity to be delivered, the lead time, the packaging activity, the documentation procedures and also the delivery in terms of your emergency conditions. Finally, the service factors are to be considered. Good vendor representatives have a sincere desire to serve the buyer's institution. The representatives of the vendors display a very courteous and a professional approach and handle the complaints very effectively. The vendor should also provide updated catalogs, the price information and the technical information. The vendors should act in line with the buyer's expectations. Inside the sales, a knowledge of the buying firm's requirements should be felt. So, when the sales are made to the buyer's organization, the vendor should feel what is the expectation and what is the requirement of the buyers. It will help the vendors to know about the customers' requirements with regard to the shipping schedules, the quantity to be purchased, the prices to be agreed upon, etc. So, inside the sales factor, we have many factors to be thought about by the vendors. Namely, as we have discussed, the shipping schedules, the requirements, the quantity, quality, time, delivery, etc. So, the service must be properly made and the proper enquiries should be answered by the vendor's representatives. The vendor should also extend a technical support to the buying institution or the buying organization. Suppose if the buying organization needs some installation facilities, those facilities should also be made by the vendors. And if the buying organization requires the repairs and maintenance also, it has to be done by the vendors. The vendors must provide technical information, the documentation procedures, etc. All the personnel engaged in the vendor institution must be very courteous enough and they must be professionally knowledgeable to handle this maintenance, repair and installation part. So the vendor should provide proper training if needed by the buying personnel for the effective use of their own products and services. Emergency support. The vendor should have an emergency support to the buying institution or the buying firms. Now the vendors should extend the emergency support in case of any failures, unexpected failures of the products supplied by them. Then the vendors should resolve the problems in a very timely manner and they should try to correct the problems by themselves. So good vendor-vendee relationship must be maintained only if proper service is extended by the vendors. So the technical support, the emergency support, the maintenance, installation, repairs must be made to the buying firms. Apart from pricing, quality, delivery and service, the vendor firms require the following C's to meet a competitive advantage or to gain a competitive advantage in the market. The 7 C's will determine the performance of the vendors. The first C being competency. So the competency is in the area of managerial, technical, administrative and professional areas. So the vendors must be professionally competent enough, the administrative aspects, the technical aspects and the managerial aspects. Next is the capacity. The capacity of the vendor firm will be measured in terms of physical capacities, financial capacities and the intellectual capacity. Next C is the commitment. The supplier's commitment or the supplier's willingness to commit physical, intellectual and financial resources is measured. Then the control. The vendor has to install an effective information control system and also the management control system to assess and to lead to the quality control. Then the cash resources. The financial resources and the stability of the supplier is more important. The return on investment, the return on equity and the asset turnover ratio will be the major indicators of the financial stability of a vendor firm. The cost. The total cost of production must be measured mainly to have the control over the cost of production, which will reflect in the prices of the materials. Next is the consistency. So the supplier must exhibit a consistency in maintaining the quality and reliability of the products and services. So the 7 C's are competency, capacity, commitment, control, cash resources, the cost aspect, and the consistency. If 2 or more firms supply the similar products or services, the standard set of criteria should be applied to rate the vendors or to evaluate the vendors. The different types of firms supplying different products or services will be standardized by having a selective criteria. But this evaluation of the different firms supplying different products is a challenging one. So in this case, the individual vendors will be adjusted with the common parameters. So the vendor evaluation will be made on the quality, the timely delivery, and the service factors and the cost. So this evaluation will make the vendors to rate it in a proper manner. So different vendors from different sources will be rated, and the proven vendors will be had in the approved list, and the defaulting vendors will be removed from the approved list, and no more contracts will be entered with them, and they will be called as the grey list vendors. So the proven vendors will have a continuous orders from the buying firms, and the proper vendor-vendee relationship must be maintained by giving a financial, technical support from the vendor to the buyer and the buyer to the vendors. So this will promote a cordial relationship between the vendor and vendee, wherein both the firms can enhance their own performances by having a mutual trust and cooperation. Rating criteria for the rating of vendors will be considered as follows: the price, the discounts received, specifications, then the time of delivery, freight and delivery charges, installation cost, the quality of service, the market information provided, the cooperation extended, the management competence of the vendor's place, the credit terms agreed upon, then the disposition of the rejects, the training of the personnel, the adjustments policies, the cost reduction suggestions, the inventory plans, and the financial position. So these factors are considered while evaluating the vendors. Now we shall see what are all the methods that are to be followed for the evaluation of the vendors or the suppliers. In a large scale and a material organization, where a large number of parts and components are supplied by different vendors, it becomes very difficult to keep a track of their performances. Therefore, in order to compare the performances of various vendors, it is essential to rate them individually. The rating may be done on different parameters such as the quality performance, the service performance, the price performance, and the like. After the performance factors have been selected, a specific procedure must be developed for measuring the actual vendor performance on each individual factor. Supplier performance on each factor must be expressed in quantitative terms. There are various ways in which a supplier can be evaluated. The major methods are categorical method, the weighted method, the cost ratio method, the critical incidence method, and the checklist system. We shall see all these 5 methods in detail. The first method comes the categorical method. The buyer makes out a list of all the factors which he or she considers necessary for evaluation, and at periodical intervals, say once in a quarter or once in a fortnight, he or she makes out a performance report. The buyer may also seek the help of others concerned, such as the stores department, production department, or the quality control department, in order to decide the grading to be given to the each vendor. A performance standard may be decided upon on a 6-point scale category That is, say for example, when the vendor gets 100 out of 100, he may be considered or he may be rated as excellent. Between 70 to 80, it is very good. 60 to 70, good. 50 to 60, satisfactory. 40 to 50 on an average. Then if it is less than 40, it is considered to be of poor grade. On the basis of this evaluation, 3 meetings should be held with the suppliers, who should be given a clear appraisal of their performance. Those who with low rating should be informed firmly to improve their own performance, and even then if they are not up to the expectation or if they are not showing any sign of improvement, then the name should be deleted from the approved suppliers list. Though one might say that this method is highly subjective in nature, it has its own advantages. One main advantage is that the buyer, in order to arrive at his own judgment, would prefer to keep a watch and a record of the performance of each of the vendor. And this is considered to be important, especially when he or she has to discuss the performance with the vendors. It is not an expensive method, and a detailed performance records may not be maintained. Since it relies mainly on the memory and the judgment of the individual buyer, this method may be practiced very easily. However, if the buyer is indifferent and does not evaluate at the regular intervals, then it can deteriorate into a routine and lose all its importance and its validity. This is not a scientific method and no quantitative measurement is done. But this method depends heavily on the experience and the ability of the buyer, and the charge is therefore made that the evaluation is said to be highly subjective in nature. The second method is the weighted points method. In this method, the evaluation criteria are quantified on a point rating basis for the quality of the goods received, the promptness of the deliveries made, and the quality of the services rendered by the vendor. The points can be allotted for them as under. Say for example, out of 100 points, we can give 50 points for quality, 30 points for delivery, and 20 points for price. But this is not mandatory to give 50 for quality, 30 for delivery, and 20 for price. You may have another parameter as response to the suggestions or services quality, the rate of your after-sales service extended by the suppliers. So in this case, out of 100, the quality will be given 50. So in either case, the quality should be given 50% weightage. Delivery is 25, the price is 50, and the response to the suggestions is 10. So whatever may be the method or your rate you are giving to the vendors, the main point is given only to the quality of the materials, which majority, 50% is given to the quality. There can be a number of other factors, and each can be given a weighted rating in accordance with the relative importance as determined by the buyer. However, the total of all these points should be 100, and a grading should be similar to the categorical plan as prescribed by the buyer. In this method, each performance criterion is quantified based on the actual performance, and each performance factor is then totaled to get the supplier's overall final rating for the period to be discussed. For example, take the quality aspect. There are 160 lots received during the year, and 16 lots were rejected because of the poor quality. Now the quality performance will be calculated as number of lots accepted divided by number of lots received into the weightage, namely the 50. So out of 160 lots received, 144 is said to be accepted. So 144 by 160 into the rating scale 50, he may be receiving 45 points. So he won't receive the entire 50 points as we have the rejections because of the poor quality. Now the number for the timely performance will be arrived as number of lots delivered on time divided by number of lots delivered into 30. So how many lots are being delivered and how many lots are being delivered in time. So that is the time performance into the weightage. Then quality performance is quantity supplied divided by the scheduled delivery into 30. So the quantity performance will be measured in terms of the total quantity supplied against the scheduled delivery. What is the delivery time that has been accepted and what is the actual delivery time made. Then the price performance will be given like this. Least offer received divided by the supplier's offer into the weightage 20. So such a rating may be used as for any number of factors considered as important with respect to the vendor. Next is the cost ratio method. This method involves an intricate system of determining the actual cost incurred on purchasing, follow-up, transportation, packaging, etc. and determining the unit cost incurred by the buyer on the material when actually received. The higher this cost, the lower is the supplier's comparative weighting. The cost to be allotted depends on the products. The usual factors are quality, delivery, service and price. The cost relating to the quality, namely the quality cost, may include the factory visits, approval of the samples, inspection, rejection of the incoming materials, losses incurred in production, then cost of defectors, reworking cost, rejection cost, etc. So these will be the major quality cost beside the purchasing cost. Similarly, costs relating to the delivery, that is the delivery cost, will include the cost of follow-upping the order, namely the telephone charges, the visit to the plant for the adopting a costlier mode of transport, etc. So to speed up the delivery, what all the expenses that are being made will be called as the delivery cost. Suppose the cost relating to the quality works out to be rupees 2000 and if one has purchased rupees 2 lakhs worth of materials per year, then the quality cost will be 2000 is to 2 lakhs, that is 1%. Otherwise, 2000 divided by 2 lakhs into 100, that is the 1% of the total material cost. The same way the cost of delivery, if it is 1000, so 1000 is to 2 lakhs, otherwise 1000 divided by 2 lakhs, it is 0.5%. So this delivery cost ratio is 5.5%. The three methods of evaluation described above are intended to enable the buyer to exercise a better judgment over the retaining his vendors. However, there are other non-quantifiable factors which may go to make a good vendor, namely integrity, behavior, attitude, etc. So in case of such an evaluation, the buyer experience and quality judgment would be ultimately counted upon. So we'll see to the critical incidence method now. Evaluating the vendors under this method requires that the record of events and occurrences related to the buyer-vendor relationship is maintained in the vendor's file. The data and the comments recorded should be more important and it is not trivial in nature. They should reflect the positive and negative aspects of the actual performance. This kind of documentation can be used as a basis for discussing the ways and means for overcoming the difficulties, improving the performance, determining the competence of the vendors and if necessary, consider this for the termination also. This method is relatively easy to implement and it is useful for the small size organization. The last method is the checklist system. There are some companies which are using the checklist to evaluate the vendors. Designed to facilitate this vendor rating from a standpoint of the financial strength, size of the vendor's place, product, service, price, quality, etc. The checklist system is quite useful in evaluating the suppliers. We shall now see what are all the factors to be included in the checklist. First one is the reliability. Is the supplying company is said to be a reliable, a reputed one, stable one, and it is financially strong? Or the supplier's ability and integrity is proved by their own past performances? Does the supplier keep in reducing the expenditure by improving their products? So reliability is said to be the first factor to be included in the checklist. That is, he has to find out whether the company is a reputed one, whether it is financially strong, whether the supplier is able to supply the materials, and whether he in time and with the referred quality, and whether they are having a proven experience in the past, and whether they are able to reduce their own expenses by improving their own products or going for an improved technology. Next is the technical capabilities. Will the supplier provide any engineering assistance to the buyer, or whether they will provide a designing assistance, and whether the supplier can handle the special needs and the designs of the buyer's place, or does the supplier contribute to the general advancements based on the technical research. Next is the after sales service. Does the supplier have a cost service breakup, and whether they have a effective after sales service backup, and if the emergency service is available from the vendors, and whether the renewal parts can be available whenever needed from the vendors. So this after sales service will include about the service backup, emergency services, and the other renewal services when needed by the buyer. Next is the availability. Will the supplier assure a timely delivery, or the stocks available locally at a very short notice? Is the supplier's location is an advantage to the buyer? Does the supplier plan the shipment to minimize the buyer's inventory? Can the supplier depend upon to provide a steady flow of products or the materials? So availability of the products is more important, and whether the vendors are able to supply it in time, and whether the emergency purchases can be made at a very short notice, and whether the location of the vendors is said to be advantageous one when he is nearby or not, and when he plans his own transportation or the shipment according to the needs of the inventory needs of the buyer, and once again we must have a steady flow of the materials. Then buying convenience. Does the supplier offer a full range of the related products? Does the supplier pack his product conveniently for buyer's use? Does the supplier have a local sales contact, and whether he is able to assist the buyer, or can he call upon the specialist for the buyer's different problems to be solved, or will the supplier help the buyer to cut the acquisition costs such as the qualifying visits, telephone calls, lab tests, incoming inspections, spoilage, wastage, rejections and complaints. So these will count upon the buying convenience. What is the convenience a buyer can have, whether he is going to purchase it from a particular vendor or not. Then the sales assistance. Does the supplier help to have a mutual markets? As we have seen earlier, we have a mutual sales. The buyer will purchase from the vendor and the vendor will purchase from the buyer. Or whether he will recommend the buyer's products to the others also in case of the mutual purchase. Then with the appearance of the supplier's product enhances the appearance of the buyer's product. Whether the quality or the appearance of the materials will definitely contribute to the enhancement of the finished product also. So in case of checklist system, we are going to see about the reliability, technical capabilities, after sales service, availability of the materials, the buying convenience and the sales assistance. So we have the 5 main methods of evaluating the vendors, namely the categorical method, the weighted method, the cost ratio method, critical incidence method and the checklist system. We shall see some illustrations under the weighted ratio method. A vendor firm has made 18 deliveries in time out of 20 orders placed on them, and he has given an average of 5% rejects and has delivered at the performance index of 110 when the average performance index is 100. Determine the overall evaluation rating of the firm. So based on this, we are going to calculate the vendor rating. Say we have 3 main factors, namely delivery, quality and price. The delivery will be given 40% weightage, quality is given 30% weightage and price is given 30% weightage. This weightage may be given on the problem itself, or we can go in for the determination of the weightage arbitrarily. Normally we'll go in for the quality that 50%, but we can have 30-30 for price and quality. The performance is 18 has been made out of 20 deliveries in time. So 18 by 20 into 40. Total deliveries will come in the denominator and the correct deliveries will come in the numerator into the weightage, that is 40. 18 by 20 into 40. That will give you 36. Next is the quality. We have 5% rejects. So 95 divided by 100. The accepted quality will come on the numerator. The total items received in the denominator, that is 95 by 100 into the weightage 30, will get 28.5. Then the price. Index is given as 110, but they have given as 100. So 110 divided by 100 into 30 will get 33.3. So totally will get 96.8. So the evaluation of the firm is 96.8. We shall see about the next calculation, namely calculate the vendor rating for the following. The item under consideration is same for all the suppliers. Quantity supplied, quantity accepted, the price of the item, delivery promised and actual deliveries. We have three main vendors, ABC. Quantity supplied is 90, 80 and 75 for ABC respectively. Accepted is 78, 80 and 70. The price is 4 rupees for 25 and 3 rupees 95. Delivery promised is 6 weeks in common for all the three suppliers. Actual deliveries is 8 weeks for A, 6.2 weeks for B, 7 weeks for C. The weightage is for quality 70%, price 20% and delivery 10%. It is directly given in the problem. Now we have to calculate what is the percentage accepted. Now 78 is the quantity accepted, 90 is the supply. So 78 by 90 into 100. It will give you 86.66%. The weightage is 70%, so into 0.7. We'll get 60.66. I'll repeat again. 78 by 90 into 100. That is the percentage accepted, 86.66. Then weightage is 0.7. We'll get multiplied by the weightage 60.66. The same way for the vendor B. 80 by 80 into 100 will get 100%. Into the weightage 0.7 will get 70%. For C, 70 is the accepted quantity and supplied is 75. 70 by 75 into 100 will get 93.3%. Into 0.7 will get 65.33%. So the quality rate is 60.66 for A, 70% for B and 65.33% for C. The price ratio is the lowest price divided by the net price into 100 into the weightage. Now the price we are going to calculate 3.9 divided by 4. So when you see on the prices of all the three vendors, 3.9 is the minimum. So minimum for the price will come at the lowest price will come on the numerator and the actual price in the denominator. 3.9 by 4 into 100 will get 97.5% as price ratio. Into the weightage 0.2 will get 19.5% as the rating for vendor A. For vendor B, 3.9 divided by 4.2 into 100 will get 92.85%. Into the rating in 0.2 will get 18.57%. Then vendor C, 3.9 divided by 3.9 into 100 will get 100% ratio. Into 0.2 rating will get 20%. Weightage is 0.2, rating is 20%. So 19.5 for A, 18.57 for B, 20% for C. Then the delivery promise kept 6 by 8 into 100. You get 75%. Then into 0.10, that is the ratio, will get 7.5%. Then 6 by 6.2 into 100, 96.7%. Into the weightage 10% will get 9.68. Then vendor C, 6 by 7 into 100 we will get 85.7%. Into the weightage 0.10, we'll get 8.57%. This is the delivery promise kept. So adding up the weightage of all the three factors, namely the quality rating, price rating and delivery rating. For vendor A, 60.66%, 19.5%, then 7.5%, we'll get 87.66%. Vendor B, we'll get 70% as quality, then 18.57% as price, 9.68% as delivery promise, so totally we'll get 98.25%. For vendor C, 65.33% as the quality ratio, then the price is 20%, then the delivery promise is 8.57%, the total vendor rating comes to 93.87%. So among the three vendors, the vendor B is getting a highest rating of 98.25%, so they will get the first rank. The second rank goes to the vendor C, namely 93.87%. The third rank goes to the vendor A, that is 87.66%. Let us now pass on to the next problem. Calculate the vendor rating for the following weightage. Quality is 50, delivery is 25, price is 15, response to suggestions is 10. So that a rate is given, the weightage is given. The data for 1, 2, 3, vendor 1, vendor 2, vendor 3. Quality supplied as 108, 90 and 80 respectively. Equivalent quality accepted as 102, 90 and 75. The price of the item is 1 rupee, 1.2, 1.1. Delivery promised is 3 weeks, 4 weeks and 4 weeks. The previous problem promised date is common, but here we have the different promised dates, 3 weeks, 4 weeks and 4 weeks. Actual delivery is 2.7 weeks for first vendor, 5 weeks for the second vendor and 4.4 weeks for the third vendor. Response to the suggestions is 90%, 85% and 100%. Now we shall go on to the calculations. Quality rating. What is the percentage of acceptance? 102 by 108 into 100 will get 94.4% as accepted quality. The weightage is 0.5. So we'll get 47.2. For the second vendor, 90 by 90 into 100 will get 100% accepted. Into the weightage 0.5 will get 50%. Vendor 3, 75 by 80 into 100. So 93.75 is the accepted percentage. Into 0.5 will get 46.875. Price ratio is lowest price divided by the price of the supplier. That rating is multiplied by the weightage. So the first vendor, it is 1 by 1 into 100, which get 100%. Into the weightage 15%, 0.15 will get the rating as 15%. Now for vendor 2, 1 by 1.2 into 100 will get 83.33 into 0.15 as the rating will get 12.50%. Then for the third vendor, 1 rupee divided by 1 rupee 10 pies into 100 will get 90.9%. Into the weightage 0.15 will get 13.63%. Then comes the delivery rating. 3 by 2.7 into 100 for the first vendor will get 111.11%. Into the weightage is 0.25 will get 27.77%. Second vendor 4 by 5 into 100, that is 80%. So 80% into 0.25 will get 20%. For the third vendor, 4 by 4.4 into 100, 90.99% into the weightage 0.25% will get 22.72%. Response to the suggestion, they have given it in percentage itself, so we need not calculate the percentage, that is 90%, 85% and 100%. Now assign the weights as 10%. 90 into 0.1 will get 9%. 85 into 0.1, 8.5%. Then 100 into 0.1, 10%. Now the total rating, that is adding up all the rating for the vendor 1. Quality is 47.2%, price is 15%, delivery is 27.7%, then response to suggestion is 9%. So totally it comes to 98.97%. For the second vendor, quality is 50%, price is 12.5%, then delivery is 20%, response is 8.5%, totally it comes to 91%. For vendor 3, quality is 46.875%, price is 13.63%, delivery is 22.72%, and your response to the suggestion is 10%, it comes to 93.23%. So among the 3 vendors, the first vendor is getting the highest rank as 98.97%. The second rank goes to the vendor 3, 93.23%, and the third rank goes to the vendor 2 as 91%. So this is the way in which the weighted points have been arrived at, and we are going to rank the vendors. Above all these techniques of evaluation of the vendors, the categorical method and the weighted point method, cost ratio method, critical incidence and checklist system, we have more of guesswork and more of subjectivity. So it is up to the hands of the buyer to minimize the subjectivity and go in for the quantifying the data. The mathematical treatment of the data is said to be one method which often reduces the subjectivity, and the results are said to be more accurate than the assumption made. In a final analysis, the supplier evaluation must represent a combined appraisal of all the factors, as we said, as quality, the price, the delivery time and the responsiveness, etc. So it cannot be achieved by numerical data itself. Besides the vendor appraisal is concerned with the adequacy of the suppliers with whom the company is currently dealing, the decision may be taken based on the correct information and provided at the time. However, since then, things may have changed. Nowadays, additional qualified suppliers may also be available, and new processes have to be developed and new markets have to be opened up. The most important point is that the key decision areas, whether it is for a long-term or a short-term effect, these factors should be subsequently considered and reviewed from time to time. With the latest technology, the more of reviews have to be made with the vendors, and the best vendor has to be selected. A vendor whose quality rating is consistently good should have a self-certification also. Under this scheme, the vendor should assure that the required quality of the components, and he has to undertake the responsibility for the supply of the materials to the direct usage by the buyer himself. The supplier evaluation form will be maintained by the buyer, and it will be based on your 3-point scale or 5-point scale, and the major factors have to be considered as suppliers are ranked as per the quality, and the deliveries are made as per the schedule. The rigorous follow-up is not necessary for them. Then he solves all the problems of the raw materials. Then the vendor is willing to accommodate whenever the production schedules are suddenly changed, and the vendor helps in emergency. Then the behavior is very courteous and considerate, and reasonable pricing is charged, and we have the other items which may be considered as and when necessary. So the supplier evaluation form will be framed by the buyer, and they have to evaluate the suppliers by grading all these factors. The next one we shall see about the buyer-seller relationship. Maintaining a good relationship with the sellers, namely the vendors and their representatives, is said to be the responsibility of a buyer. His dealings with the vendors should be very courteous, and if any suggestions are to be given to the vendors to maintain a better relationship must be followed. First one is the courtesy. Utmost courtesy and promptness should be shown to the suppliers' representatives whenever they visit the buyer's place, and they must be given with a proper treatment. So they must be treated in a very cordial manner, and they must have a mutual convenient time to discuss with. Next is the disclosure. When sending out the enquiries, full details of the required materials, delivery time, etc. should be given to avoid unnecessary correspondence and the clarification. Impartiality. Strict impartiality should be observed in awarding the orders, and all unfair practices should be avoided by the buyer. The lead time. Adequate time should be given to the supplier to effect the deliveries, and rush orders should be kept to the minimum. Reports on delay in delivery or unsatisfactory quality should be politely conveyed, and on no account the rude letters or rude words should be sent to them, and discourteous words should not be spoken to the vendor from the buyer's side. And it is also an advantage to be aware of the supplier's manufacturer's problems and the difficulties they are facing in the production, and the buyer has to extend the help to resolve all those problems, and they must have a mutual understanding also. The buyer should make a prompt payment for the supplier's bills, and he should not make any undue delay. And if possible, the personal visits must be done to the supplier's plant and often contribute their own technical know-how or any training that is needed by the vendor. So good relationship will bring an ultimate benefit in terms of high quality, better price, dependable delivery, prompt replacement of the rejections, and assistance in meeting the emergency requirements. Now we shall see what are the major guidelines to be followed to maintain a good buyer-seller relationship. For the buyer's aspect, from the buyer's point of view, let us now see what are all the major guidelines. First one is the buyer has to base the relationship on mutual understanding, mutual trust, and interdependence. Next is recognize and appreciate the need of the suppliers. Then deal with the suppliers very honestly and ethically. The number of rush orders must be kept as minimum, and if possible it must be eliminated, and they should not make the vendors to feel very delicate. Then the buyer has to keep himself well informed and technically equipped for effective and purposeful negotiations. So only when he is well informed, then he can go in for the powerful and purposeful negotiation. Then command full authority and get equipped with all the details about the policies, practices and requirements of the organization. Then encourage the personal contacts with the suppliers. Then visit periodically the supplier's plant and assess the weaknesses and strengths of the suppliers. Then make the supplier informed about the buyer's policies and if necessary the basic programs that are being created. Then say the salesman of your organization and also the buyer's organization in terms of the negotiations. So the time and energy of the salesman must be saved while negotiating the price and the delivery. Then allow sufficient lead time to the buyer, vendors. Then allow permissible tolerance limits in both the store's instruction and also the forward instruction, and send the payment for the materials which is accepted in a correct manner and in a prompt time. So these are the guidelines for the buyer. Next we can see for the supplier. Now acknowledge the orders received properly. The vendors have to acknowledge the orders received properly, and they have to maintain the delivery schedule, and they have to follow the specifications and instructions given by the supplier, buyer, and send all the dispatches promptly and remove all the rejected materials promptly. Now, for both the parties, they should not be guided by any emotions, and they should not reply the letters in a rude manner. So they have to act promptly. They should acknowledge the work of one another, and they have to inform the unsuccessful bidders without any delay. And they must be very courteous enough, honest, fair and humble. So these are the basic guidelines to maintain a buyer and seller relationship. Now we shall see what are all the factors that will promote a goodwill between the buyer and the sellers. So it can be stated that it's one's opinion of a company is formed through a contract with its own employees. The manner in which they respond to your correspondence will treat you as the same. Some of the factors which promote the goodwill between the company and suppliers will be discussed now. First is the fairness. Give the suppliers representatives a full, prompt, courteous hearing of the subject, and that is to be justified by the nature of the products as they are going to sell. The salesmen have to make a significant contribution to the source development. A discourteous treatment may often make them to be more worse and avoid a particular buyer altogether. So in case the buyer will be the loser. Keep the competition open and fair. No supplier likes unfair practices and special favors dispensed to the buyer's favorites. Decline to take the advantage of the seller's error. A supplier, for example, might have missed out adding a line stating that the local taxes extra, or they have avoided the taxes. Then it would be a clerical error and also a critical error, and you should not make any attempt to cash on it. Discourage the revision of the quotations after they have been submitted. Insist on receiving the best practice in the first quotation itself and hold to bidder on it. So no further revision of the quotations will be encouraged. Keep the specifications clear and avoid ambiguous specifications. Show the consideration to the seller's difficulties and cooperate with him whenever possible. A supplier may have to run into some genuine difficulties which may make him incapable of fulfilling his own obligations towards the buyer. So the problems of the vendor should be understood with compassion. Then avoid rejection of petty items for the petty reasons. Then the buyer may have the legal rights to reject it, but because of it you cannot reject all the materials, and the rejection should be within the reasonable limits. Having the buying policies and principles consistent, the supplier has to follow all the buying policies of the buyer. Do not solicit the quotations from the potential supplier if you do not intend to buy from him, even if he offers you an acceptable material at a satisfactory price and delivery. Suppose we are not going to enter into a contract with him, we should not encourage to receive a quotation from that buyer. The qualifications of a supplier should be determined before the quotations has to be requested for. Then observe strict truthfulness in all the transactions with the suppliers. Do not indulge with the details of the quotations received from one supplier to the another and any other confidential information the supplier has shared with it. So no leaking of information to another supplier has to be made, and this truthfulness and maintaining the confidentiality of the information will add to the integrity of the buyer. Then always be prompt and courteous in the correspondences. Then speed up the order and the test of samples submitted by the suppliers and inform them the results immediately. Then furnish complete information when calling for the quotation by sending the supplier samples or any other information that is required, and have an efficient follow-up system. Keep an open mind on the new methods and materials offered. Do not be conservative in the approach and always look for the new developments. Encourage the conducting of test and trial on the materials that may be of high value to the company. Visit the major sources of supply to keep themselves as informed about the stability and the other various methods of the sources of the materials. Then be a quality minded as a general rule. Maintaining a business friendship with the supplier will always make a buyer to go ahead to seek the help of a business friend when a new item is urgently required is the quickest and the surest way to find the best market with the best price. When the buyer finds it very difficult to get a scarce item, the supplier, for the sake of friendship, will undertake to procure it, and it will be said to be of high help to the buyer. So courtesy, honesty and the straightforwardness will be the basic foundations for the fair dealings, and they must be appreciated by the suppliers, and buyers stands to benefit from them. So this guidelines will definitely help to maintain a good relationship between the buyers and sellers. namely the vendor and the buyer. So this evaluation of the vendors and rating of vendors will make the buyer to select a good vendor and to have their own orders in a very orderly way, and they can get it in a prompt manner. So vendor-vendee relationship is to be maintained with a very cordial manner, and this relationship will be maintained for a longer period of time to have a continuous flow of materials by having a mutual trust, mutual integrity and mutual orders. Thank you.